everything there was to say about the case. It got a little awkward. Long silences set in. Eventually, though, the conversation loosened back up. Siegel threw me a softball, the kind of thing bureau guys ask when they don't have something better to say.
So why'd you get into law enforcement, if you don't mind my asking?
I smiled into my lap. If anything, he was trying too hard to do the buddy-buddy thing. Hollywood just didn't work out. Neither did the NBA, I deadpanned. What about you?
You know, the exotic travel, the great hours.
For once, he got a laugh out of me. I decided before coming that I wasn't just going to sit there and hate him all night. That would have been like torture.
I'll tell you this much. If things had gone differently, I think I could have been a pretty good bad guy, too.
Let me guess, I said. You have the perfect murder in your head.
Don't you?
No comment. I popped the lid on my second coffee. Most cops do, though. Perfect crime, anyway. After another long pause, he said,
How about this? If you could take someone out, someone who really deserved it, and you knew you could get away with it, would you be torn?
No, I said. That's too slippery a slope for me. I've thought about it.
Come on.
Siegel laughed and leaned back on the car door to look at me.
Say it's just you and Kyle Craig alone in some dark alley. No witnesses. He's all out of ammo, and you've still got your Glock. You're telling me you don't pull the trigger now and ask questions later?
That's right, I said. The Kyle reference was a little weird, but I let it slide. I might want to, but I wouldn't do it. I'd take him in. I'd like to bring him back to ADX Florence. He looked at me, grinning as if he were waiting for me to break.
Seriously?
Seriously.
I don't know if I believe you.
I shrugged. What do you want me to say?
That you're a human being. Come on, Alex, you can't get by in this business without at least a little walk on the dark side.
Absolutely, I said. Been there, done that. I'm just saying, I wouldn't pull the trigger. Whether or not it was true, I really wasn't sure. I just didn't want to go there with Siegel.
Interesting.
He turned back to face the front door of the Midlands.
Very interesting. Alex was lying through his teeth. He was a good liar, but he was lying. If he had any idea he was sitting across from Kyle Craig right now, that Glock would be out in a heartbeat, and one round shy a second later. But that was the whole point, wasn't it? Cross didn't have a clue. Any doubts about that were well behind them. This couldn't possibly be more delicious, could it? No, it could not. Kyle sipped his coffee and went on. That's what this is all about, isn't it? He said offhandedly. Interesting. Siegel's speech and inflection were now more natural to him than his own.
What do you mean?
The whole foxes in the henhouse thing, the good guys and the bad guys all mixed in together. The line between good and evil isn't so clear anymore.
That's true. More for the Bureau than for the PD, though.
I mean, everywhere. The crooked congressman, the greedy son-of-a-bitch CEO who just can't get by on the first 10 million. Hell, embedded terror cells. What's the difference? They're all out there right under our noses living next door. It's as if the world used to be black and white and now it's all just gray, if you squint a little. Alex was staring now, right into his eyes. Was he finally tuning in?
Max, are you talking about Stephen Hennessy here? Or yourself?
Uh-oh, Kyle Max answered and shook a finger at him. I didn't even see you switch hats. Very slick, Dr. Cross. And Alex just laughed. It was amazing, really. Kyle had managed to make Cross hate Max Siegel. And now, with the turn of a few screws, Kyle was well on his way to making Alex into a true blue fan of the smart but obnoxious agent. Who knows? Siegel might have gotten all the way to an invitation for family dinner or some such thing at the rate this was going. But then, something happened that even Kyle hadn't expected. A bullet came through the windshield.
Siegel and I were both out on the pavement and behind our doors at the same time. I heard another shot hit the grill, and then a sickening thud as one hit Siegel's side of the car. Max?
I'm okay. Not hit.
Where's it coming from? My Glock was out, but I didn't even know where to point it. My other hand was dialing 911 while my eyes scanned the buildings around me.
One of those two.
Max pointed at the Midlands and the place just north of it. I looked up at Hennessy's apartment again, still dark, with the windows closed. Rooftops were his thing anyway. Wasn't that true? Hello, are you there? Said someone on my phone. This is 911 emergency, can you hear me? This is Detective Cross, MPD. We have an active shooter at 1221 12th Street, Northwest. I need immediate assistance, all available units. Another shot exploded a planter and a second-floor window directly behind me, one after the other. I heard a scream come from inside an apartment. Police! I shouted for anyone who could hear. Stay down! At least half a dozen people were still out on the sidewalk scrambling for cover, and there was no way to keep more from coming along the walkway on the road.
We gotta do something. We can't just stay here. Someone's gonna get shot.
I looked at him across the driver's seat. If he's using a scope and we move fast, he might not be able to keep up.
Not with both of us, anyway. Take the Midlands. I'll get the next one up.
This was completely outside of protocol. We should have waited for backup, but with the potential for so much collateral damage, we weren't willing to delay any further. Without another word, Siegel came out of his crouch and sprinted across the street. I wouldn't have thought he had it in him. I counted to 3 to put some space between us, then started running with my head down. Another window shattered somewhere behind me. I barely noticed. My only focus right now was on getting to the other side of that apartment building's front door and then getting inside after Hennessy. Once inside, I took the stairs. It was 10 flights to the roof, but I'm in pretty good shape. Adrenaline did its job too. A few minutes later, I was coming out on the top of the Midlands. It was a strange déjà vu, a lot like the other night at the museum. I swept my Glock left and right. Nothing. No one behind the door either. I'd come out through a utility room, and the walls were blocking my view of the 12th Street side of the building. That's where Hennessy would have been shooting from if he was here. Sirens were wailing in the distance. With any luck, they were headed my way. I pressed my back against the wall and moved slowly to the corner, weapon first. The street side of the roof, though dimly lit, looked deserted to me. There were a couple of folding lawn chairs and a steel barrel lying on its side. No sign of Hennessy, though. I came to the edge and looked down. 12th Street was quiet down below. Other than the bureau car with its doors open and a patch of broken glass on the ground, there wasn't any indication of what had just happened. A few people were even walking by, oblivious to the damage. Then, as I leaned out for a better look, my foot hit something that made a small, metallic clinking sound. I took out my mag light and pointed it at the ground to see what it was. Shell casings. Several of them. My pulse spiked, and I turned around, right into the barrel of a Walter 9mm. The man with his finger on the trigger, presumably Stephen Hennessy, held the pistol up about an inch from my forehead.
Don't move. Not a goddamn muscle. I won't miss from this distance.
He'd done a pretty good job of changing his appearance. Glasses, dark hair, clean-shaven. Enough to let him move around the city anyway. And probably enough to walk away from here unrecognized, too, I realized. It was all starting to fall into place. Hennessy?
Depends who you ask.
You left that anonymous tip at the bureau yourself, didn't you? This whole thing was a setup, I felt sure. And we'd given him exactly what he wanted. A quiet surveillance detail by the people who knew the most about him. Whether he'd been trying to kill us in the car or draw us closer, I still didn't know.
And look what I caught. Now I want you to reach back slowly and drop that Glock right off the roof.
I shook my head. I'll throw it over there. I can't put this thing in the street.
Sure you can.
The tip of his Walter was cool when he pressed it into my forehead. Presumably he had been using something bigger a few minutes ago. I reached back and let the Glock fall. When it smacked onto the concrete below, my stomach clenched. He took a step back then, out of arm's reach.
To tell you the truth, I just wanted you dead and out of the way. But now that you're here, I'm giving you 30 seconds to tell me what you've got on me. And I'm not talking about what's already in the papers.
No, I don't imagine you are. You want to know how deep you need to go before you can disappear again.
20 seconds. I might even let you live. Talk to me.
You're Stephen Hennessy, a.k.a. Francis Moulton, a.k.a. Denny Humboldt. You were with U.S. Army Special Forces until 2002, most recently in Afghanistan. There's a grave in Kentucky with your name on it, and I'm assuming you've been running freelance off the radar since then.
What about the Bureau? Where else are they looking for me?
Everywhere. He adjusted his grip and locked his elbows.
I know who you are too, Cross. You live on 5th Street. No reason I can't make a stop there tonight, too. Understand?
I felt a rush of anger. I'm not messing with you. We've been grasping at straws. Why do you think we don't have a whole team here?
Not yet, you don't.
The sirens were definitely getting closer, though.
What else? You're still alive. Keep talking.
You killed your partner, Mitch.
Not what I'm asking about. Give me something I can use. Last chance, or you won't be the only Cross to die tonight.
For God's sake, if I had something, I'd tell you. The first police cruiser came screaming up the block down below.
Looks like your time's up.
A gun fired, and I flinched before I realized it wasn't Hennessy's. His eyes opened wide, a line of blood rolled onto his upper lip, and he collapsed straight down in front of me, as if someone had just dropped his strings.
Alex?
I looked to the right. Max Siegel was standing on the roof of the next building, lit from behind by a small shaft of light from the stairwell. His Beretta was still up and pointed my way, but he lowered it when I turned to him.
You okay?
I stepped on Hennessy's wrist and took the Walter out of his hand. There was no pulse at the neck, and his eyes were like blank saucers. He was gone. Max Siegel had taken him out and saved my life. By the time I stood up again, the street was filling fast. Besides the sirens, I could hear doors slamming and the squawk of police radios. The block was locked down, but I still needed to go and find my Glock. Siegel appeared to stare after me as I headed for the door. I owed him a thank you, to say the least, but the street noise would have swallowed my words, so I just flashed a thumbs up for now. All good. It rained the next morning. We had planned to do our big press briefing outside, but ended up moving it to the Daily Building lineup room instead. 100 reporters, maybe more, had shown up for this thing, and we put a live audio feed in the lobby for the spillover and also for any latecomers. Max and I sat at a table at the front with Chief Perkins and Jim Heekin from the directorate. The sound of camera shutters was everywhere. Most of them pointed at Max and me. We were most definitely the odd couple. This was one of my famous moments. I'd had a few before. There would be a couple of weeks of constant interview requests, maybe a book offer or two, and definitely some number of reporters waiting outside my house when I got home that night. The briefing started with a statement from the mayor, who took about 10 minutes to explain why all of this meant we should vote for him in the next election. Then the chief gave a rundown of the basics of the case before we opened up the floor to questions. Detective Cross, a Fox reporter asked right out of the gate, "Can you walk us through the events of what happened on that roof last night? A real blow-by-blow? Only you can tell that story." This was the sexy part of the case, the stuff that sells papers and ad space as well. I gave an answer that was short enough to keep things moving along, but detailed enough to keep them from spending the next hour hounding me about how it feels to come face-to-face with a cold-blooded killer. "So, would you say that Agent Siegel saved your life?" someone followed up. Siegel leaned into his mic.
That's right. Nobody takes this guy out but me.
They gave him a good laugh for that one.
Seriously, though, we may have had our bumps in the road, but this investigation is a perfect example of how federal and local authorities can work together in the face of a major threat. I'm proud of what Detective Cross and I accomplished here, and I hope the city's proud of us, too.
Apparently, even Siegel's good side had a huge ego. But I was in no mood to be picky or small. If he wanted the FaceTime, he could have it. I held back for the next several questions until inevitably someone asked, "What about motive? Can you tell us definitively at this point that Talley and Henderson were operating on their own, and for what reason?" "We're looking into all possibilities," I said right away. "What I can tell you is that the 2 gunmen responsible for the Patriot sniper killings are now deceased. The city should go back to normal. As to any open aspects of the investigation, we have no comment at this time." Siegel looked at me but kept his mouth shut, and we moved right along with our dog and pony show. The full truth, which we would never